you playing?
Hello, and welcome to our third season of What the Bleep Are You Playing? A podcast where we play a game, many times bad, and tell you why the bleep we played it. I am Shawn Enchanto, Thomas McRoberts, and Garbage Mason, and we played... DragonBall Evolution on the PSP.
What did I do to you?
What a way to start season 3.
Yeah, not with a bang, but with a fart. With a hand fart.
In season 1, we started off with not a particularly good game, but Marvel Imperfects.
Right.
Or Rise of the Imperfects. Yeah,
Right.
Rise of the Imperfects.
Close enough.
Yeah. And then season 2, we started with a good game when we did Def Jam. So
That's
I was
right.
like, look, we got to get back on the
We got to
track.
keep the pattern.
We got to make sure, look, I started this thing by saying many times bad, and I got to make sure that we play our quota of bad games.
Gee, thanks.
Fuck you.
That's fair.
I think this bad game was worth about 10.
Maybe
more.
This is this is our first jump into the PlayStation Portable.
Yeah.
We only our second handheld game we've done. Sadly, we haven't done any good handheld games yet.
We have yet to do a good one. Okay. Well, all right. Right off the start, which one was worse?
Oh, Muppets.
You think Muppets was
Muppets
worse?
was worse.
Yeah, Muppets was worse.
Muppets was worse. And even the
Yeah.
reviews across the board kind of say Muppets was a worse game.
That's fair.
Muppets was also just more disappointing
Yeah.
because this is a tie-in movie game based on a bad movie. Expectations are incredibly low.
Yeah.
Whereas Muppets is a franchise and you had such a unique and interesting story for Muppets, time travel, and they're like, what if we made a bad GB color platformer?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I was Muppets is worse, but that's not to say that this game is good. This is
No.
Christ
This
almighty.
is.
Okay, so the fucking thing is that, to be honest, the gameplay of this game is not the problem, because it's just a reskin.
Yeah.
It is a
Yeah.
reskin of Shin Budokai.
which was Shin Budokai 2 and Shin Budokai Another Road had come out.
Yeah, so Dimps, the developers, who we've talked about on here before, basically just took that and put Dragon Ball Evolution skin on it. The problem is, one, I don't think either they were given enough time or they gave enough of a shit.
No.
Either
one.
It
for
also
sure.
is wild to me. And again, maybe it's Dragon Ball Evolution is a 20th Century Fox American-made film. This came out first in Japan. This game came out about almost a month before in Japan.
Wow.
And Dimps is a Japanese company.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, it is very interesting that, and again, I understand Dragon Ball is Japanese and things like that, but it feels like maybe they were like, we need a tie-in game. Let's just go to the guys who make a lot of the Dragon Ball fighting games and have them do it. And I think maybe if there was time and effort on it, they might have made a PlayStation 3 game. Made something for the PS3 or the Xbox, which is what they're making for.
Because this was only a handheld.
They only made it for the handheld. And again, they were working a lot on the handhelds at that time with the Shin Budokai series.
20th Century Fox probably just wanted them to stick with what they knew. 20th Century Fox was not passionate about the movie. They wanted to make it exclusively to keep the rights. No one on set thought that this movie would be good, and spoilers, it wasn't. So what probably happened was, we don't really care about this movie. We're just making it to keep the rights. We want a tie-in game so we can maybe get a little extra cash. You guys do it. Do whatever the hell you want with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible, and so I think maybe if there was passion behind it, you might have seen... Because I think Dimps, at that point, the only Dragon Ball console games they had made were the Burst Limit games, which were on the Xbox, the 360 at the time. So I think... They weren't. I don't know if they made any PS3 games until Xenoverse. I think Xenoverse was
No, because they did the one before that. I thought the the Raging Gods or whatever.
Battle of Z. They maybe did.
I think they did that.
They might have. I don't remember. I know they had a gap between Dragon Ball games for a while, like specifically like console Dragon Ball games, but I don't remember when that gap was because I know.
So maybe I'm mistaken.
But regardless, this is a company that does know Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball fighting games. They've been making them for decades now, and so they do.
Are they still like the primary developer of Dragon Ball fighting games?
Some they've done the Xenoverse games. They did release Dragon Ball The Breakers. They were the one who made The Breakers recently.
Oh, so. Yeah.
So, yes, but I know there was a little bit of a gap in there, and obviously Arxis made Fighters, so.
Right. That's what I was wondering, is if they made Fighters.
So, yeah.
No,
Arxis made Fighters. That's why it's a competent fighting game. Demps makes fun anime games, but I don't think they've ever made a game that any high-class fighting connoisseur would say,
consider.
I'm going to sit and play this for competitive play.
Right.
Because they're rarely worried about balance. They're worried about giving you the anime experience.
Okay.
Most of the time.
I guess there's nothing wrong with that.
No, nothing at all.
No, there's nothing wrong with
Makes
that.
good games, but they don't necessarily... The thing about a lot of their Dragon Ball games is they are Dragon Ball games first,
and then
fighting games second. And last season we covered Super Dragon Ball, which was a fighting game first, Dragon Ball game second, and obviously Fighters is the one that kind of found that balance of Dragon Ball and fighting game.
Yeah.
Right.
Meanwhile, we have this, which doesn't feel much like a fighting game or Dragon Ball.
No, it really doesn't.
Because it's based off Evolution, which, is Evolution.
Mm-hmm.
It does have the highlight of being one of the few games that you can play Chi-Chi as, and the first game that you could play Bulma as.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Well, Bulma doesn't get to be playable because Bulma's not a fighter.
Yeah, she was supposed to be playable in the original Budokai. They have done data mines and gone through all the stuff and found
they
found stuff for it and model, and I think a little bit of a move set that was being developed as well. But so this game does have that, but in the movie that has so few fights, it's
very similar to when they made Street Fighter the movie, the game.
Yes,
where. Again, it's a competent enough fighting game because it's just Street Fighter 2. But, with all the stuff surrounding it, plus, there's barely any fights. Dragon Ball Evolution has maybe 3 fights. Street Fighter the movie has like 1. So
wow. Yeah, it's
wow.
So my big thing, see, maybe saying, "Wow, this game sounds awful." Shawn, why did you make these guys play it? Other than torture.
Yes, tell us why. We must know.
So part of it is, I think the big part of it is, I didn't want for Bleep You watching, I didn't want to cover Dragon Ball Evolution because I don't think I have much to say.
Understandable.
Despite a lot of it. But I did want it to have something on the podcast. And I think the game is a little more palatable. And on top of that, the story mode, while being awful and long and plotting, is hilarious.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's
unintentionally hilarious.
It's the type of
laziness for a game that you don't have a whole lot of passion for.
Yeah.
That you make, that you just take stills from the game and put a little art to them, do a little Photoshop.
We made a lot of our own humor with this game. Because if we weren't laughing at it, we were yelling at it. And laughing is better than yelling.
I wasn't even yelling.
Yeah.
Well, I was yelling.
I wasn't... There is nothing here.
Yeah.
I cannot get passionate about this game in terms of anger or in terms of anything else. There is just nothing here.
It's a nothing burger.
It is Shin Budokai, a better fighting game, filtered through a pretty bad movie, which... okay, from what I've heard, I haven't seen Dragon Ball Evolution. I don't fucking want to. So you have to put it through that filter. You have to acknowledge that it's probably not being developed for long because there is no fucking balance in this game.
Yes.
It is essentially, credit where it's due, it's probably accurate to the power levels of the movie, but no one cares. They just want a fun fighting game, and this... I'm sure it's a fun fighting game if you play with friends, but hey, that requires two PSPs.
That requires 2 PSPs and
2 games.
2 copies of the game, and one person who's willing to admit they own Dragon Ball Evolution on the PSP. You ain't gonna find all 3.
Yeah, you can only find me admitting it. But yeah. I think I think for sitting down and playing this game and going through it, it's just, as I said, there is a decent fighting system here. That is there. You know, it's very basic. It's more basic. Like the Dimps and the Budokai franchise are known for very basic fighting systems, and somehow this game is more basic. Like your special move, your ultimate attack is just circle up.
That's it.
That's all it is.
And that's just bonkers to me that a like an attack. It's not like Naruto Clash of Ninja that like that the special move is really easy to pull off, but it doesn't do a ton of damage. Like it does a solid amount. Like it does maybe like what was it, a quarter to half of a health bar depending on
something like that. Yeah.
This your special move does sometimes a full health bar, like a full like it's. And it's not hard to get your energy charged up. It takes no time to get the 5 energy to pull it off. I was trying to pull it near the end in the Goku Piccolo fight, one of the final ones, where I was trying to end it with a Kamehameha to be movie accurate, and I kept missing. But I got, 3 pulled off? You know,
I only counted 2.
Was it 2? It was 2 or 3. Like I got 2 or 3 in that time frame of like, but it was like not like there wasn't. It wasn't like there was time. Like it wasn't like I could have probably, if I didn't really spat back and charged up my ki, I probably could have gotten a third one off at that point. Like it doesn't take much to get them. So like there's very little reward to pulling them off. It's just something you can do, and like there is something to a fighting game when, and like in the Budokai games, specifically things like Budokai 3, which have easier ultimates to pull off. It's like a 4-button combo that you hit like all at once type of thing like that, and you can do your ultimate attack. Which isn't hard to do, but there is something rewarding to when you pull that off. You're like, oh yeah, I pulled that big attack off. I did that because I was able to dodge, get to an ultimate form, build up my energy, and then do the combo to be able to pull it off. In this game, you don't have to do anything to get that ultimate attack off.
Yeah, this isn't a game where you'll find any quarter circles.
No.
Sorry, Thomas.
Definitely not.
I wasn't exactly expecting it.
But also, hey, look, it's a fighting game that did not have ring outs, so Thomas at least has to give it that.
Do I? I don't have to do shit.
But in the end, like, that is the truth. There is just not a lot to this. It does have modes, so there is that.
Yeah, it does have an arcade mode, which that is something I will give it. It does have a variety of modes. Mm-hmm. So,
which a game that you're primarily probably going to be playing by yourself, because again, aforementioned, you have to find someone who had the PSP and the game. Mm-hmm. And I love the PSP, but there's a reason that it didn't exist after very long. And guess what? I doubt this game was a huge seller. I didn't see any of the numbers on it, but I highly doubt this was on any lists of top sellers at any point.
Yeah, that's understandable.
Because I don't know who's running out to get this. Like,
the only thing I can see is, I can genuinely see this being a thing where like Grandma knows little Timmy likes Dragon Ball, so she gets him Dragon Ball Evolution for Christmas. Mm-hmm.
We have Dragon Ball
for 3 years.
Oh yeah, I could see that, but also like, yeah, but also is your grandma really running out to get you a PSP game?
No, probably not.
Probably not. That's
because your grandma likes. He's like, you have this PlayStation, dearie. I got you this PS2 game. Grandma, it's 2023.
It's a very weird game. It's very weirdly put together. It feels like the movie just feels late. Like the movie just feels like, oh, we have to make a movie and we're gonna make it. This game feels less like, oh, we have to make a game, and more of like, oh, I guess we'll make a game.
Yeah,
there's no like the urgency, like we just have to get it for license sake. It just feels like, I guess here you go.
Here's a game.
Again, it's not a game I can get angry about or whatever, because there's just nothing.
It's shovelware. It pretty much exists to fill space on a shelf. That's really all it feels like.
It's what it feels like. I'll put it a bit above shovelware because, like I said, the gameplay is competent.
Yes,
which is more than I can say for other shovelware. But it's also just like there's just nothing for it. Look, this podcast has always been built on we try to find the positives in basically everything. Like, we're always searching. I don't want to be one of those negative Nancys who is always shitting on everything. I don't want to be some 2008 era YouTuber trying to rip off the angry video game nerd or whatever.
Right.
Like, I'm always trying to find something. And with this game, I can see some glimmers. Like I said, the gameplay, it's basically Shin Budokai. But that's basically it. And you might think, well, the gameplay is a big part of the game, so with that, wouldn't it be fun? And I suppose, but at the same time, that is again going to the Street Fighter, the movie, the game argument. Sure, it's funny because it's basically Street Fighter 2, but in the end, play Street Fighter 2.
In the end,
in this case, play Shin Budokai.
Yeah, Shin Budokai.
There's nothing this game does not offer anything except the story mode for the lulz.
Yes.
And
that's the only reason is because you want to laugh at the story mode. Because, look, the Budokai games and Demps making them are known a lot for doing long-winded story modes, you know. Especially starting with Budokai 3, a lot more of the faces coming up and talking. But like in Budokai 3, you still had a lot of voice work. You still had a lot of things going on. There was funny interactions between characters, even if it was just, you know, a picture coming up and dialogue. And that works better in an anime setting. You know, even modern games like Persona does a lot of the, you know, characters coming up and you have the faces just there and just dialogue. It's not uncommon in Japanese RPGs or other things like that. It's just, in this instance, because it's a PSP game, so there's no voice acting in it, you're just reading.
There's some voice acting. Shawn took some time.
There's some voice acting in the fight. There's some voice acting in the fighting, which feels like it's just all the Shin Budokai noises.
It's just carried over from that, yeah.
I think it's just the Shin Budokai. I think the actors may have ripped some lines from the movie, but yeah.
Yeah, it's that feeling in the story mode when you're just going from panel to panel. And yeah, a lot of the panels look hilarious, and I laugh at just how goofy it is. But for a gameplay, especially a story mode, like we talked about when we did Clash of Ninja, how it was even with all the like dialogue in it, it's maybe a 15-minute story mode. And this has a few more fights than it, and then Clash of Ninja that had 6 fights. I think this has 8-ish fights. I think 8 or 9. But
yeah, 4 of them are Piccolo.
I lost count.
It is so much just clicking and going through it in between each fight. So much.
I described it to Thomas. It's like the world's most boring Ace Attorney game.
And that's basically Mason's 100% fucking right on that. It's just a boring visual novel that occasionally it'll be like, all right, let's switch over to the fun channel.
That occasionally breaks onto a fighting game.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like there's a charm to be had of like the goofy, as Thomas says, for the lulz. Like there is something that is goofy, charming to it, but that only stands up for maybe 5-10 minutes of it. And by 30 minutes into the story mode, you're like, they're really gonna go through every plot point of the movie and make you read it.
And about 35 minutes in, I cracked. About 35 minutes in, for the fucking lulz, I just started reading Goku and Wario's voice.
Which was very funny, very, very funny. We kind of cast them, different characters playing it, and that kept us kind of going through it.
That's like the one benefit to this game is that you can kind of make your own fun, but your level of it.
At the end of the day, the same thing can be said for
about anything, pretty much. Yeah. And the thing is, like, that's us playing in a room and having a PSP hooked up to a TV.
Yeah.
Whereas, can you imagine if you're sitting and just playing this on your PSP by yourself? I can't imagine, like, and again, you probably aren't playing it in one sitting. You're probably not trying to beat the story mode in one sitting. You're probably going to break and come back and things like that. But honestly, I'd be like, I'd break and I would not come back. Like,
yeah.
It just, and maybe if you were a kid who watched the movie and had fun and enjoyment, didn't have a lot of connection, maybe there's something to it. Like, oh, I remember this and this is fun. I was a kid,
If you're one of the 9 people who liked Dragon Ball Evolution,
it's something though that just like I don't know really what this game really has to offer, and that's the kind of the sad part. I say sad because like I'm not trying to just crap on a game and things like that. But like it just, I don't know what it has to offer outside of the occasional LOL or the occasional, goofy bit or the fighting game's fine, but like I go get Shin Budokai.
Yeah.
It's actually like specifically Shin Budokai 2 is actually a pretty good game. Underrated thing about the PSP, fighting games were actually pretty decent on that system. It was the first handheld that I feel like fighting games were actually decent on. And so like you could do decent things with it. And I don't know, when you just reskin a game, there's a part of me that just goes, well, why don't I just go get that game?
Yeah.
And if you make your own charm to it, that's different.
Mm-hmm.
But this game really doesn't. Genuinely, I felt bad, but genuinely, the story mode got so boring at a point that I pulled out my phone and I started reading Dr. Stone. There ain't nothing.
We could have probably ended story mode and just come and say a lot of the same things, but there was a push by me and to get through it, because of just the whole story. The whole story is the whole getting through it. It is a weird, goofy, strange decision. It's just a ball of weird decisions from beginning to end on the story mode, and I think getting through it was big for me. Just was like, okay, let's get through this whole thing, because even just the end, you can at least get to one of the cool decisions they made, the credits, when you actually control a fight during the credits, which is fun.
It's pretty cool.
It's one of those things that like, even though it has been done before, I always like it when it shows up, because it's always one of those things where it's like, oh, that's cool. Having gameplay during the credits is always cool.
But if you're running to buy a video game because there's a fight in the credits, the game's probably not good.
The game's probably not good.
That's just the truth. Yeah. And the other thing that this game does is it fills in random lore of the movie for whatever reason. And so we get last names of a lot of characters, which is just already some of the names, the extra names. And Goku goes to school with Fuller, who we learn his first name is Carrie.
Carrie Fuller.
And we learn that the other bully's name is Agundis. But probably the number one hilarious thing is, for whatever reason, they decided to give Chi-Chi a last name. And you think the name Chi-Chi, you're probably going to be like, well, she's probably going to have some semi-Asian sounding name.
Nope.
It's Chi-Chi McRoberts.
Yeah, that's...
And in, me putting on the Dragon Ball lore hat and going, but her dad is the Ox King. Does that mean it's Ox King McRoberts?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think it's either mentioned in a piece of dialogue or it's something in the movie there that her dad is like a used car salesman, I think is what it is, that just goes by like...
Which means all I'm imagining is the Ox King from the anime, going like, no credit, no problem, get a down payment on your favorite Chevy here or something.
It's him in like a foam like mascot ox costume with a crown.
I imagine it like in the Muppet movie how Sweetums is the helper in there.
Yeah.
I imagine there's no actual human there. It's just.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chi-Chi's like, hey, Goku, meet my dad, and it's just an ox.
It's this, and I just, the movie already had this weird obsession with trying to put Dragon Ball in the real world, and the game is like, hey, what if we take it a couple steps further and we do some really crazy dumb things?
It's the Americanization of Dragon Ball.
Like calling Chi-Chi's house the McRoberts estate, so good for her having all that money. And then...
It's all from all the used cars her father sold.
So, you would think that, you say, like, Piccolo's castle, Piccolo's floating fortress, or something like that. No. Piccolo's secret base is Piccolo's dirigible.
Oh, I love the Goodyear blimp.
And I just... It's just so, it's things like this that I'm like, and that's part of why I did want to play it, is some of these dumb, silly, charming things.
Yeah.
That being said, it's not enough to say, oh, that makes this game worthwhile, because that's not true.
Because at that point, just look up a playthrough. Just look up like a playthrough of a bunch of funny people talking about it or whatever.
Yeah. Like you said, didn't like Team 4-Star did.
Team 4-Star has a playthrough. It's really funny. I've seen a couple of other playthroughs on. They're funny. Like this game is like, especially if you look out on a lot of the like different streamers and popular that have played this game, and it's funny because this game is weird and goofy, and it's kind of like when we on Bleep You Watching we did the Super Mario Bros. Movie.
Yeah,
and there was something that Thomas said was like, I don't know if I would have enjoyed this movie if I was alone.
And that's kind of where
that's kind of like, this game can be fun in a group, which is then really annoying that this game was made on a handheld system, and most people are playing handheld systems by themselves.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's like, you put a game that is like, could be this weird, guilty pleasure on a console system that people, hung around, maybe had a beer or two and played this game, and you put it on a handheld system.
You took away like the one good thing about it.
And that's
one of the good things about
weird.
it, rather.
The game does not have good reviews. Surprised by what
you
we
don't
said
say.
here. It's a little higher than I actually expected. It's not good, but
it's a 2 out of 10 instead of a 1.
It's a 28 on Metacritic, but most of the like publications gave it between 1.5 out of 5 stars to 2.5 out of 5 stars. So like, I was expecting a lot of more ones, and I think GamePro and GameSpot both gave it 3.5. I think GameSpot actually was out of 10, so they really hated it.
Wow.
But then like, the other weird thing about this game is the Japanese audience didn't hate this game.
Really?
Famitsu gave it a 27 out of 40. Yes, they go out of 40. Don't ask me why.
Yeah.
They played, and it's like, this is how Americans see Dragon Ball? It's a fascinating study.
No surprise that it is on a couple of publications' worst games of all times lists.
Yeah.
Game Radar in 2014 put it on their list.
Man, I can't even go that far.
I don't think I would, but it's
like,
I'm almost struggling at times to try to like talk about this game.
I don't know. Like, for me, when I'm thinking worst games of all time, I'm thinking games that like actively enrage me, like games that actively piss me off. Mm-hmm. And this game, again, it just did nothing for me.
That's fair, and I think maybe if we had multiple PSPs and played some multiplayer and found the imbalance, or played arcade mode a little bit more, there may be some other stuff from it, or survival mode, or any of the other modes. Again, this game has a lot of modes, which props to the devs for being like, well, we're gonna put it, you're gonna play hours in the story mode and then put this game away. But if you don't, look at all the modes you can play.
Look, this lonely child, again, got it for Christmas, didn't like it, so we gotta make sure he's got a bunch of content.
Yeah, that's the best thing about this subpar game, is that there are more ways to play this subpar game.
It also, there was an opportunity here. Maybe if you didn't even really have much of a story mode, but there was an opportunity to. You're not going to fix the bad movie. You're not going to fix the bad movie, but there are ways to improve it, and somehow they made the story worse.
They found a way. Death finds a way.
That is kind of impressive. It seems like for a studio, maybe maybe they were just trying to throw things in and different things, but like for a studio that had worked and so loves the franchise Dragon Ball, it's weird to see them make this thing that is like, we don't know anything about Dragon Ball. And some of it is the script that's in front of you from the movie.
I'm kind of wondering if there was like notes from the studio.
Oh, I guarantee there was.
Like if Mick Roberts was like, yeah, that's Chi-Chi's last name, and the Dense developers are like, fucking what?
Well, my actual guess on that is that a lot of times things that are developing for like movies that haven't come out, or the novelization, things like that, they get an early screenplay.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
And my guess is in the screenplay, those things were in it.
Well, that's kind of what I'm guessing.
So probably there was like scene interior Piccolo's dirigible.
And this is like, a what?
All right.
Why is he in a big blimp?
There is a part of me, so in a lot of the more recent Dragon Ball games, specifically things like Dragon Ball Fusions and then the Xenoverse games, where you have like this big hub world and you have like flying items in it, part of me really wishes Piccolo got a dirigible.
If one of them was just called the dirigible.
That would be really fun. there are, as I said, and I think that's the best thing I can say about this game. There are things that I do look at this game fondly with. Unfortunately, in that package is everything else.
Yeah.
And everything else is...
It's one of the games.
Yep. Mm-hmm. I guess the only other thing I can say about the game as a whole at this point is, like, I know that a lot of anime story modes don't let you play different characters.
Yeah.
But...
That I will say that is something I appreciate, that they actually do. You don't just play as Goku.
Yeah, but like I would like to get a little like you don't get to play Roshi till like the end, and that fight is annoying. You have to finish with a finishing move, and like it's just one of those that I'm just like, man, I kind of wish that I could have played Roshi one more time beforehand. I think the only other thing left to really talk about in this game is, and we mentioned it earlier, is it is a microscopic character roster, and I get that the movie had no characters, so much so that they're putting Bulma in with her dual wielding Lara Croft pistols, and they created monster Fulum out of what are called, I think, the Regenerators.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I get why there's not a lot of characters. Again, most of the problems with this game come from Dimps' hands being tied.
Yeah. Some of that I wonder if they would have been allowed to like make versions of other Dragon Ball characters in it, which would have been kind of fun. Like, what if, like, again, at the time, every game had to have unlockable Broly. What if Broly was unlockable?
Yeah, they get Krillin in this game, but he's played by Kevin Hart because get it short.
There are funny things they could have done, maybe a few more characters, but yeah, it is a very limited roster.
Krillin, played by Peter Dinklage.
It is, yeah. There's not a lot there, and I think that would hinder like arcade mode replayability. Is once you play a couple of characters, you've played them all.
Yeah.
The game I don't feel like it's very replayable, unfortunately. In it. But
that's basically it.
There's just not much to say, unfortunately. We're off on our season on a big shebang with Dragon Ball Evolution.
You and I have very different definitions of the word.
Shebang?
Yes.
Huh.
I'd classify it as a word.
So, on this podcast, we have 2 important questions that we ask of every game that we play. The first is, how does it hold up?
Hey,
you couldn't even ask that question without laughing.
No, I couldn't.
You know what? It holds up great because all the problems it has.
That's fair. It is. All the problems were probably the same back then. The graphics, and again, it's not like the PSP was like the PSP had some pretty good graphics, especially for the time. It was very similar. It was just slightly downgrade PS2 graphics. Like they did some great things on it, and this game is not one of them.
No.
Justin Chatwin's head is too small for his body because, again, they just paint over the
Oh, yeah. These human-looking things on anime-ass bodies. It is hilarious.
It's so weird.
It's ugly.
Yeah.
But I do think that aspect... I do think the gameplay as a whole, like the fighting does hold up pretty well. It's a solid fighting mechanics overall. Like, it's fine. It's fun.
It's functional.
It's simple. It's overly simplistic, but it's fine. And so that means it's not the worst game that is in terms of holding up, but I wouldn't say it does.
Right.
I wouldn't say, because again, we even said about it, the charm of it is to be able to play with friends, and we're talking about playing on an old handheld system that
nobody has.
That is not as common. So in the end, I don't think it can hold up.
No. Does it hold up better or worse than the movie, though?
I think a little better because the fighting is at least competent. Yeah,
fun.
The fighting is
that's fair.
I'm pretty sure you could play arcade mode at any point in time and still find some fun in it.
You know what? If I squint my eyes and just erase the character names, I'm sure this is a fun game. It just happens to be very legally distinct.
Unfortunately, now. The second question we ask, would you like to see a remake or a reimagining of this game in a modern setting?
You know what? Absolutely, yes. Just take out Dragon Ball itself.
So do like something that happened with this game, but code it over with a different game?
No. I mean, like,
Deb's got the live-action One Piece. Now they're making
Jeez.
You know what? I've heard good things about that show. I'm never fucking watching it. I've heard good things. But genuinely, like, kind of my thing with Dragon Ball Evolution is, from what I hear, I think it would be fine if it just wasn't called Dragon Ball. I don't think it'd be good, but I think it'd just be like meh. So kind of my thing is like, I mean, no, in all seriousness, no. Do not remaster this. Do not remake it. Unless for an April Fool's joke, you're like, here, let's put this for free on PlayStation Plus.
Yeah, that's kind of my thing. If you put it like on the PlayStation Plus, if you dropped it on the PlayStation Plus with online multiplayer or just local multiplayer, there's something that could be occasionally like for fun. Hey, we're gonna break out Dragon Ball Evolution at a party.
Yeah.
That's the only instance I would want to see this game exist in any future use.
You like do that as an April Fool's joke or whatever.
But no, Demps didn't even want to remake it at the beginning because they put it only on the PSP. Mm-hmm. It just, yeah, there's no reason. Sadly, I say sadly. If you're a fan of Dragon Ball Evolution, then. I kind of want to meet you. I'm intrigued.
I want to hear your argument.
I want to hear, but in the end,
you meet up with the guy, and he's like, "Look, I know it's bad, but
there's just nothing. This game, unfortunately, offers nothing."
Yeah, think about how it offers for me, where it's a game based on a really bad adaptation of a franchise that I don't really care about to begin with. It's not that I don't like it; it's just not my thing.
It's not your passion.
And then you
get this game,
and then it's just like.
You made us play M&M Adventures last season.
That's true. You did.
I have no place to talk. It has suddenly occurred to me
that I have made a mistake.
Excuse me for a moment while I try to fit my very large foot into my even bigger mouth.
But yeah, I think we can now, we can officially just cross off and say, hey, we played Dragon Ball Evolution.
We were one of the brave souls.
We have done it.
There's going to be one guy who sees this and is like, Dragon Ball Evolution, PSP, and like, they mean the movie? No, there was a game.
There was a game.
Did they make a UMD movie of Evolution?
Oh, yeah, it was on the UMD. I'm pretty sure it was on the UMD.
Yeah, you can have the Dragon Ball Evolution double feature, baby.
Albeit that, that means you don't get the fun of playing it while watching it.
Yeah, but Dragon Ball double feature, 2 screens.
You have 2 PSPs, one playing the movie, one you're playing the game.
Jeez. At that point, just buy a DVD of the movie.
No, UMD's the future, Mason.
Is it?
Yeah.
Sony thought it was for a minute, and then nobody wanted to buy it.
Did
there was a part of why the PSP failed is because Sony at the get-go was like, UMD is going to replace discs. They had mock-ups and ideas for like UMD players to hook to your TV. And then the PSP it sold fine. It wasn't the Game Boy, and that's, it's a high goal that you just shouldn't try to achieve at. Mm-hmm. But it sold fine. It did fine. And then they were like, oh, wait, nobody likes UMDs. Abort.
Right.
And they still gave the PSP more love than the Vita. They created the Vita, and they were like, whatever.
Yep.
We might look at you someday.
It's just it huddling in the corner. Am I going to get played with? No. Oh.
Yeah.
Poor little PS Vita.
Great system that just got no love. But the PSP, I'm glad we got to visit it. I don't know the next time we'll visit the system, so this was kind of one that I could quickly grab and have us play so we could at least have some PSP talk.
Yeah.
But what do you guys think? Are you a fan of Dragon Ball Evolution? If so, please email us, bleepyouplayed@gmail.com. I need to know your defense of Dragon Ball Evolution.
I need to know that you exist.
That's bleepyouplayed@gmail.com. But also, you can email us with your opinions on this game, your opinions on the PSP, or anything else that we've talked about. We would love to hear from you. And if you'd like to tell us to play a game, you can, over on our Patreon, patreon.com/whatthebleep. Support us and tell us what to play. We have our Super Bleephead tier. It is $15 a month, and you can tell us to play a game, and we'll do that. And with that, welcome to Season 3. We'll be back.
I have no place to talk.